We are fresh off the heels of UFC 310, the last pay-per-view of 2024. We've got to recap all of that action, including the title defense that Alexandre Pantoja had, the victory to remain undefeated for Shavkat Rakhmonov, and more. But first, we've got to talk about the massive fight announcements that happened over the course of the weekend. UFC 311, the first pay-per-view of 2025, January 18th, in Los Angeles, California, is absolutely loaded. And the following month in February, in the return to Australia, we have two more title fights to talk about at UFC 312. Let's get into these announcements. First and foremost is the long-anticipated lightweight championship main event rematch between the current champion, that is Islam Makhachev, the number one pound-for-pound ranked fighter in the world, taking on Arman Tsarukyan. These two first fought each other way back in April of 2019 in a short notice 3-rounder on a fight night card. Since then, and by the way, Islam Makhachev was the winner on that fateful night. Islam has tallied off 9 additional victories with 0 defeats, beat Charles Oliveira to become the champion, and has defended his title 3 times, twice against Alexander Volkanovski and once against Dustin Poirier in June of this year. And since Arman's lost to Islam Makhachev, he has fought 10 times, racking up a 9-1 record, and the only loss is a very, very close decision. Some would even go toward the word of controversial loss, and that was to Mateusz Gamrot in one of the most high-level fights of 2022. But since that loss, has won 4 consecutive bouts, none bigger than his decision victory at UFC 300 over Charles Oliveira. That is enough to earn him the crack at the rematch of Islam Makhachev, his rival, and this time not just to get revenge nearly 5 years in the making, but to become the lightweight champion of the world. And in the co-main event, we've got another championship fight, and that is in the bantamweight division, as Merab Dvalishvili will look to defend his title for the very first time since gaining it after beating Sean O'Malley at Noche UFC in September. He is on an 11-fight win streak, and he will be taking on the undefeated Umar Nurmagomedov. The 28-year-old Umar Nurmagomedov is 18-0, 6-0 in the UFC, and he is coming off of his biggest win to date when he was launched into fighting a ranked opponent. He was launched into fighting a top 10 opponent. He was launched all the way into fighting a top 5 opponent in what would also be his first ever UFC main event, and he passed that test with flying colors, getting the victory over former title challenger Corey Sandhagen in Abu Dhabi. It was one of the most high-level fights of 2024. And there is some heat behind this one. There is some hatred. There is a bitter rivalry here. You can just feel the tension in the air. There was even a press conference held this weekend after the fight announcements were made. Merab Dvalishvili is more animated than we have ever seen him before.
Be man first. You have to be man first. You are a good fighter, but you're not a good man.
The man.
You are a piece of shit, okay? You are a piece of shit. You lost respect.
And that's saying a lot. He's one of the most flamboyant, crazy characters that we have in the UFC right now. He wants to defeat Umar Nurmagomedov. He wants to defend his title. He wants to defend his honor and everything in between. This one has storylines for days. It is one of the biggest fights that you can make in the UFC and the biggest to make at 135 pounds, regardless of any mixed martial arts promotion. And we've already talked about this one, so I won't go into it as much, but Jiri Prochazka and Jamahal is the featured bout. 2 former champions, 2 men coming off of losses in 2024 to the same man via the same method, Alex Pereira by knockout. Who will bounce back? Will it be Jiri or will it be Jamahal? We've got 2 top 10 lightweights, number 9, Beneil Dariush, number 10, Renato Money Man Moicano. This is a very, very fan-friendly bout in the 155-pound weight class. Beneil Dariush is coming into this having lost 2 consecutive bouts, but look who it's against. It's to Charles Oliveira. It's to Arman Tsarukyan. And before that, we all know the insane win streak that Dariush was on. It was 1. It was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive victories. One of the best win streaks in lightweight division history. Never got to fight for that coveted UFC title. Now or never for Beneil Dariush. And Renato Moicano is coming off of his first UFC main event where he finished Benoit Saint-Denis in front of the hometown crowd in Paris, France. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's won 6 of his last 7 bouts. The only loss was when he flew all the way across the world on 72 hours notice and competed for 25 minutes against Rafael dos Anjos. That was back in March of 2022. I already talked about this one on the podcast as well last week, but it's Kevin Holland versus Reinier de Ridder, the former 2-weight world champion in one championship, transitioned into the UFC, started his career in the organization with a submission over Gerald Meerschaert. Kevin Holland looking to bounce back, get in the win column. He said it himself on Twitter recently, or X I should say. He's known now as the Jose Cuervo guy and not necessarily the UFC fighter. And a fun one in the light heavyweight division as we have Johnny Walker and Bogdan Guskov, 2 guys that will go out there to fight for the knockout, and they are both ranked in the top 15. Johnny Walker's last victory was in May of 2023 when he beat Anthony Smith, but since then has lost 2 consecutive bouts, both by knockout, to Magomed Ankalaev and Volkan Oezdemir, not to mention the no contest that he had with Ankalaev late last year, whereas Bogdan Guskov has won back-to-back fights, both by knockout. Zach Palga and Ryan Spann. He launched himself into the top 15. Anthony Smith's twin, can he avenge the Lionheart here and beat Johnny Walker? I promise I'm almost done with UFC 311, but I'm not done yet. We've got Payton, Talbott, the undefeated young phenom that looks to be very, very promising in the UFC, sitting at 9-0 currently. He's taken on the seasoned veteran that is Raoni Barcelos. In the heavyweight division, we've got more ranked fighters as Jailton Almeida will look to make it 2 back-to-back victories. In order to do so, he will have to beat the polar bear that is Serghei Spivac. Almeida suffered his first UFC loss in 2024 when he got finished by Curtis Blades, but bounced back very quickly with a big submission in the first round over Alexander Romanov in June. Now he's coming back again, trying to make it back-to-back victories, beat a big-time ranked opponent in Serghei Spivac, who is coming off of a victory against Marcin Tybura, where he subbed him back in August in their rematch in just 1 minute and 44 seconds, and he's won 4 of his last 5 fights. The only loss to Ciryl Gane, who's coming off of competing at UFC 310 this past Saturday. Zachary, Reese, and Sedriques Dumas is an absolute banger. Top 15 Grant Dawson is back looking to take on Diego Ferreira. Carol Rosa, number 9 in the women's bantamweight division, taking on the number 13 ranked Eileen Perez. We need movement in the women's bantamweight division desperately. That's what we're getting here, especially with Eileen Perez. She's one of maybe just the only, to be honest with you, prospects in this current state of the 135-pound women's division. And I might as well just finish off the rest of the card, right? Just show love to everybody. The undefeated Rinya Nakamura is back. He's taking on Muin Gafurov. Ricky Tercios, the Ultimate Fighter alums, taking on Bernardo Sopai and Tagir Ulanbekov, who is a top 15 ranked flyweight, 15-2, taking on the undefeated Clayton Carpenter. UFC 311 and the new state-of-the-art Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California is stacked, locked, and loaded. But we're not even done with this video because UFC 312 is shaping up very nicely as well. In the UFC's return to Australia, we have a double headlining title fight spot for back-to-back pay-per-views. The main event will be the rematch between Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland in the middleweight division. Dricus Du Plessis coming off of his first title defense where he submitted Israel Adesanya and beat him in their grudge match, and Sean Strickland bounced back from his loss to Dricus by defeating Paulo Costa. Now they will run it back. I'm not upset at it, but I do wish we were getting Khamzat Chimaev versus Dricus, but I think it's pretty clear now Khamzat will face the winner of this rematch. And in the co-main event, my main event, it is the fight that I've been waiting for years at this point. It is Zhang Weili looking to defend her title for the second time for her second reign, and to do so, she will have to be the first person to ever defeat Tatiana Suarez. Zhang Weili is coming off of a title defense at UFC 300 over Yan Xiaonan. It was a shame that we only got to see her fight just once in 2024, considering she was absolutely one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on planet Earth right now, and especially within the 3 UFC women's divisions. And Tatiana Suarez, injuries aside, she will finally finally get her chance to prove just how damn good she is. We saw her come back after nearly 4 years away back in February of 2023 in the flyweight division just to get accustomed to things. She finishes Montana De La Rosa in the second round. Then she returns back to her home at strawweight in August of last year, a fight I got to see in person where she submitted Jessica Andrade. That launched her back into the top 5 of this division. She was then slated to face top 5 opponent and surging Virna Jandiroba in a number 1 contendership bout. It was actually supposed to take place at UFC 310 on Saturday. That fight fell through, more so due to undisclosed reasons. It came out at first that Tatiana was injured again. She came out and shut that rumor down that she was not injured, and maybe this is the reason why. Instead, they pulled her from that card and put her in here to face Zhang Weili. To be fair, I do believe that Virna Jandiroba has also done enough to be a number 1 contender, so I'd like to see her just face the winner of this and not have to fight anymore. But Tatiana Suarez, 10-0, undefeated, 33 years old. Zhang Weili, 25-3, 35 years old. One of the most electric fighters in women's mixed martial arts history. An absolutely huge title fight at 115 pounds. UFC 311, UFC 312, back-to-back banger cards to start off 2025 if we're talking about the pay-per-view schedule. Give me your thoughts. What are your most anticipated bouts from these 2 cards? What other fights do you think will fill out that UFC 312 card in Australia? I'm seeing rumors of Jack Della Maddalena and Kamaru Usman. What a 3-headed monster that would be as the featured bout underneath of those 2 title fights. So give me your predictions on the rest of that card. Give me your thoughts on both 311 and 312 in the comments below. If you enjoyed this quick recap of the fight announcements that happened over the course of the weekend, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week, I break down and preview the best fights heading into each card, what storylines are there, and what is at stake. I recap the most meaningful results, and, as you see here, give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA, and be sure to follow on your favorite audio listening platform as well, such as Spotify and Apple, where podcast episodes release every Monday and Friday. Have a great week, and I will see you in the next video.